The 1925 standard Sweet Georgia Brown is the subject of today's jazz guitar lesson. I'll show you the chords, you'll get the chord shapes, you get a chart, and we'll dive into the harmony a little. This song's very heavy on the dominant chords, and it's a great example of chords moving in fourths, so a good one to know, and it's got a really catchy melody too. So, chords you're going to need. First off, dominant chords. We're going to need E7 off the A string. We're also going to use that same shape for G7, G flat 7, F7, and D7. So that's going to get a lot of usage. On the E string root, we're going to need A7. We're also going to use B7 there. Other chords you're going to need are F sharp minor 7 flat 5 up here, and G6 down here. You can also do it with a little finger if that's more comfortable. And then A minor 7. You're also going to need E minor. This is like the bar chord. Some people play E minor 7, maybe E minor 6 here, but I think just a plain E minor works nicely. It's like the bar chord, I'm just not catching the top string because we don't need to double notes. Don't tend to do that in jazz chords too much. Although we are doubling the E there actually. Get the shapes on the chart over at my website, link in the description, and follow along. So we start out on E7 and we've got 4 bars of that. 4 bars of A7. Feels like a blues in E so far. 4 bars of D7, dominant chord central, resolving to the G, and then A minor 7, D7, G, and then this F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7. Let me play that whole section for you. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the first section really. So you've got, starting out on E7. Now we're in the key of G, and I'm sure you can hear, we go E7, A7, D7. It kind of naturally rests on that G. When you get to that, it's a sense of resolution. Like until then, it always feels like it's going somewhere. Yeah. That's the G. And then the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7 helps us kick off the next section. So, what we got going on here, well, if we took a G major key, we'd have G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7, D7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, back to G. We don't have many of those chords really. But we do have an E. We have E minor 7. Now, what we'd call the E7 at the start is a 6/7, so it's like a 6 chord but as a dominant. Moving to 2 but as a dominant chord, so A7. So these are all secondary dominants because they're not the primary dominant. The primary dominant is the 5 chord in the key of G, which is D, which is our next chord. So you think of it as E7, chord 6 as a dominant. So it's a secondary dominant, and it's the dominant of A7, which is why it takes us to A7. And then A7 is the dominant of D, takes us to D. And then D is the dominant of G, the key. And that's why it resolves naturally there. So we're cycling through dominant chords in fourths. When you've got E to A to D, D to G, that's moving in fourths. So if you look at a circle of fifths, circle of fourths, if you go counterclockwise on a circle of fifths, it becomes a circle of fourths. Find E, we then move a fourth to A, we then move a fourth to D, we then move a fourth to G. So it's doing some pretty expected movements. Like I also said, E to A7 is like a blues. A7 to D7 is like the first chord changes in a blues in A. So it's kind of movements we're used to hearing. So chord 6 is a dominant, chord 2 is a dominant, chord 5, chord 1. Then we get a 2, 5 in the key of G. Then we get this F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7. Sometimes people don't play the F sharp minor 7 flat 5 and they just play a bar of B7, which sounds fine too. So what's going on here? Hopefully you know that F sharp minor 7 flat 5 to B7 is a minor 2 5 in the key of E, E minor technically, and it resolves nicely into E7 again to help us start again, because B7 is the dominant of E. So we start again. So far we've had loads of dominants. E7, A7, D7, B7. With D7 being the one from the key, and the others all secondary dominants, which help us move and help the song go to places. So we have that F sharp minor 7 flat 5 to B7, taking us to the next section where we do the same as we did at the start. 4 bars of E7 followed by 4 bars of A7. Then we get the difference. Then we get E minor, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7, E minor, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7, and then we have this 4, G7, G flat 7, F7, E7, A minor 7, sometimes people play it as A7, D7, G, and then B7 to help us go again. So that was E7, 4 bars, A7, 4 bars, bar of E minor, then the F sharp to the B7, do that all again, then the rundown. Getting onto a B7 or F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7 helps us start again. So the interesting points there, chord 6 is a dominant again, so that's the E7, A7, chord 2 is a dominant, and then E minor. E minor is chord 6, the actual chord 6 in the key of G, and then we have this 2-5 again from the key of E, E minor, does it again, so that works nicely in a circle because of that B7 being the dominant of E minor, and then G7, so chord 1 is a dominant, and we just fall down, go down chromatically until we reach E7. 2 beats on it each, then 2, 5, 1. Sometimes people play this as G7, G flat 7, F7, E7, E flat 7 instead of A, minor 7 or A7, D7, G. Listen to that. Or, as I've written, which works, both work too. There's some tritones at play there. I'm not going to get into that today. Here's once through the form close up. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So key takeaways from this one. There's some similarities with the blues, the secondary dominants. So the idea that, you know, in a song you only have one dominant chord as like the parent dominant, the 5 chord, which in the key of G is D7. All the others are secondary dominants used to create interest and movement to other places. Interesting, it doesn't start on chord 1, that you don't get that resolved till that G. So it's like out of key straight away. And again there. It's only really when you get to the G6 that you hear it sort of resolve nicely. So important things to hear when you're thinking about soloing too, this sort of stuff. That final section when it goes to E minor, it's kind of moving to the relative minor. You know, we're in the key of G, E minor is the relative minor, and a common thing standards do is move to the relative minor. So you kind of get a different feel in that section by making that E minor sort of this central chord. And this cool sort of 4 down is just super fun and interesting to help us get back to the beginning. I'll put a couple videos up to help support some of the things covered in today's lesson, particularly secondary dominance, my video on that important topic. And another standard which would work well with this one to know, similar era, I think it might even be from exactly the same year, 1925, maybe 24 actually, All of Me. Anyway, join me every Wednesday, every Saturday for jazz guitar lessons. Please hit that like button, you leave me a comment, it really helps get this video out to more people. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, you take care.